For my presentation, I'm going to be presenting on the article, How Much Do Coaches Matter when looking at uh, performance variables attributed to sports. This paper was used at the 2019 Research Papers Competition by MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. And this paper was authored by Christopher R. Berry and Anthony Fowler of the University of Chicago. And I will be presenting this research, and my name is Dougie Ergood, and I'm a senior in undergrad at the University of North Carolina. The study of sports analytics has changed the way teams are managed by coaches, but the coaches themselves have not yet been the subjects of analysis by looking at statistical data. The purpose of this study, from the author's point of view, was to develop a new methodology for estimating coaches' effects on the performance of a team and to apply it to a variety of professional and collegiate sports. The same methodology, which looks to predict outcomes, has also been used to estimate the effects of political leaders on various economic and policy outcomes and have been successful. So they definitely wanted to try and to apply it to sports, and they used a whole bunch of sports, college and professional, to see how it would apply and whether they would find some significant data. The purpose of this paper and the study was to determine if a switch in coaches changes a team's performance on the field. So changing players obviously will have a change in performance, but it has not been yet determined statistically that a change in coaches will have an impact on the performance of a team and on the players. The null hypothesis for the study, or the general conclusion from existing studies, is that coaching changes has either no effect on a team's performance or a slightly negative effect. But limitations of these previous studies include that researchers don't factor for a transitional period for the players and coaches to get accustomed with one another. Most of these studies in the literature only examine the first season after a coaching change. So they haven't looked at years of after a coach has been changed, but in this study, they look for multiple years after to see how the team is doing after the players and coaches get accustomed with one another. The method, and the most important thing to this study is their method. And their method it's called randomization interference for leaders effects. And it also has an acronym of RIFLE, which is interesting, and it's just easy to remember. So this study was conducted across multiple high-level sporting industries, such as college basketball, college football, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, National Football Association, and the National Hockey League. The study used the data from all seasons for these leagues to determine how changes in coaches affected the outcome for certain statistics within each game. And they used this method of RIFLE to determine this. In this model, the researchers have attempted to remove variation attributed to the quality of the team's opponents, as well as home field advantage, to improve statistical significance. In examining the data, the residuals are calculated, indicating the performance of each team in each game over above what would be expected given the year, home field advantage, and the quality of their opponent. Then the average residual is calculated across games for each team season, which becomes their outcome of interest for estimating coach effects on performance variables. The focus in this methodology was on the R-squared statistic, which is the proportion of variation in the outcome that appears to be explained by coaches' fixed effect. A high R-squared statistic will show genuine coaching effects, which will lead to the researcher to reject the null hypothesis that a coaching change has no effect on the performance of a program. For the results, it was detected that coaching effects are seen in all sports within the study. Coaches explain it between 20 to 30% of variation in a team success, which was really high. Coaches matter more in college football than they do in the NFL. But from this study, it can be seen that they play a large role in a team's success or failure in all teams and sports that they studied. So for the MLB, in looking at the outcome of runs scored against the defense, the p-value was statistically significant, being less than 0.001. And the difference in R-squared suggests that managers explain 28% of variation within teams. For the NFL, the same statistics, the same data is seen where coaches matter when looking at fumbles and the amounts of penalties the team commits. Coaching effects explain 30% of the within team between year variation of these variables, which is very high. And in the NBA, coaches explain 30% of the variation in points scored and allowed. In the NHL, coaches matter also, showing that they have an impact on how many goals are allowed and how many run goals are scored. And the larger R squared was typically seen on defense than on offense for each of these teams, which is interesting to show that coaches have a larger impact on the defense side of a team than they do have on offense, probably because offense could be a little bit more associated and connected to the talent of the players being able to score, but coaches still have a say in that as well, because they get to recruit those players, and sometimes those highly talented players come to the school or to this program because of the coach that they're going to play for. So in the results, it shows that the R squared has a high effect size, and that was for each and every team. It all looked the same, where as the proportion of variation of coaches' effects, it was increasing, and R squared was increasing as well. And in the study, they showed they used Bill Belichick as an example because he's one of the greatest coaches of all time in all sports, and it's seen that he is about one standard deviation away from the average, and he's just been able to, his effect on that and any team that he's coached is seen based on the amount of wins and how well they've done in so many of the variables that the study looked at. And for the other tables for each and every sport, in table 1, it showed for MLB managers, and you can see that the R squared was high in all of those, and the p-value showed that it was statistically significant, highly statistically significant for runs allowed, point margin, and victory. So coaches are definitely they matter. And then for NFL coaches, it was all the same, and it showed that for points allowed and victory, the p-value was really low, showing statistical significance, and for fumbles and for own penalties, which these all have an effect on the outcome of the game. And the same for NBA coaches, where points scored, points allowed, point margin, and victory, and the R squared, like they're high, and the p-values are low, which shows that there is a statistical significance and there is variation explained within their data. And then the same is for college basketball coaches and NHL coaches. And this just shows that this method is successful, and they're able to analyze whether a coaching change has a positive or a negative effect on a team, whether a team is going to be successful or they're going to be failing. And so the implications of this study, this analysis challenges the perspective that coaches don't matter to the success of a team. And this analysis concludes that coaches significantly affect outcomes in every sport within the study. The goal of this paper was to offer a method and associated software that an analyst can use to study the effects of coaches on any measurable outcome in the sport. Thank you.